Well, folks, Ray Epps is free. And with that, the January 6th cover-up is nearly complete. We are now 2 years past that fateful day. The new Pearl Harbor, as some might call it. Worse than 9/11, as some have said. And one of the key puzzle pieces to solving the mystery of what occurred on that day, of course it's not a mystery to all of us, was Ray Epps. One of the only people who we have video evidence of actually calling for violence, actually calling for a real insurrection, saying that the citizens who were gathered there needed to rise up and overthrow Congress. That man who was denounced by Baked Alaska and a mob of Trump supporters as a federal agent, as an interloper, as an agent provocateur, who then went on the next day to command a squad of men who charged the gates, who threw down the barricades, who started a stampede, which marched its way into the Capitol. If you believe that there was an insurrection on January the 6th, certainly Ray Epps has to be near the top of your list of culprits, because if there was such an insurrection that was organized against the United States government, Epps certainly was a high-ranking member of the officer corps in that insurrectionist army which gathered on the Capitol lawn. But no, Mr. Epps, we're told, by the likes of Adam Kinzinger, a member of the January 6th committee, he's just, he's a concerned citizen who maybe got a little heated, but his heart's in the right place. And so he was let off the hook with little more than a $500 fine. Oh, and 1 year of probation, but no jail time. And so I believe, he's not even a felon. But Aunt Susie, who stayed between the velvet ropes, who just walked around and, held up a sign, trying to make her voice heard, who never broke any windows, who never beat any cops, who never called for any sort of violent action to be taken. Your Aunt Susie gets 6 years in the slammer. What was it that Joe Biden was just bragging about in his speech? They've sentenced collectively the January 6th defendants to over 800 years in prison if you add up all the sentences. Well, of that 800 years, Ray Epps is serving 0 of them. Not one of those years, not even a fraction of a year, in prison, in jail, for Ray Epps. And remember, Ray Epps wasn't a nobody. He was the state chapter president for the Arizona Oath Keepers, which, if I remember correctly, when the Oath Keepers was, I think they're gone now. I think they fell apart and were taken down by the January 6th PSYOP. Arizona, I think, was one of the biggest and top states. That was one of the most important chapters for the Oath Keepers. So Ray Epps was a high-level Oath Keeper. Another reason why, when they were saying that the Oath Keepers were, the ones who conspired to wage this war of insurrection against the United States, you would think that this former high-ranking Oath Keeper, Ray Epps, would have been one of their top marks. And so the only logical explanation here, the only honest explanation that someone who's looking at this in good faith can come to is that Ray Epps is a federal asset, that he is one of their guys. It's not like he just ratted on somebody after the fact. No, they would not let someone like Ray Epps, who did what Ray Epps did on January the 6th and January the 5th, who is the most publicly recognizable figure, the most publicly recognizable leader of actual insurrection. They wouldn't just let that guy go. He would be the poster child for the insurrection. He would be the guy that you want to plaster his name everywhere. You would want him. You would want that video of Ray Epps, the videos, multiple videos, to be all over the news, and you would want to paint Ray Epps as the face of all Trump supporters. But instead, that's not the case. He is the one they let off, the one who is most guilty, if anyone is guilty. And so what that says is that he was in on it from the beginning. This was an act of provocation, plain and simple. Because this is what governments do. You know, the left used to be the ones who would accuse the government of doing this all the time. The left would say that during their peaceful protests, the police would send in provocateurs who would try and, rile the crowd up, make them get unruly, and then that would be enough pretense for the police to then say, well, this is a riot and we're going to shut this down. And so your protest is over. Everybody go home, and anyone who doesn't go home, we're gonna kettle you, round you up, and throw you in jail, at least for the night. Yet when that happens to a bunch of right-wingers, well, then we forget all about that. And unless you're like Jimmy Dore or Glenn Greenwald or, one of these other guys who like to call balls and strikes. I hear the Iowa caucus is less than a week away. I wonder what the presidential candidates, other than Vivek Ramaswamy, I can probably guess what he would have to say about this. I wonder what the presidential candidates have to say about Ray Epps and this whole situation. You'd think if anyone were to be on top of these cases and trumpeting them at the top of their lungs, it would be the people who are supposedly running for president against Joe Biden on the Republican side. They should be the greatest champions for these people who have been wrongfully imprisoned by the Biden regime. The people who were entrapped, and those who were unable to be entrapped, just jailed on convicted of trumped-up charges. You would think it would be the likes of DeSantis and Haley. DeSantis, long before he was running for president, was noticeably mum about the whole January 6th situation. We had a very prominent January 6th defendant from Florida. It was the, what do they call him? The lectern guy, the podium guy. That guy was from Florida. He did not get a good shake at things. I'm sure there were a lot of other people from here as well. But DeSantis, like Trump, really said nothing about these people. I think Trump has gotten a little better lately because, he made the pledge. He's like, oh, well, I'll pardon everyone, once I'm president again. It's like, oh, okay, you couldn't lift a finger to help them with their legal cases when they were all on trial. A lot of them still sitting awaiting trial. They're just being held, without bail indefinitely. I mean, if I were Trump or I were DeSantis, I would open with that in every speech. I would say, you want to see what life is like under the Biden regime? Just cite specific examples of people who are being held by the federal government over January 6th and list, what their crimes were, what they did, how they're been in prison for 2 years over trespassing, how their homes were raided and, their children were taken away or what have you. All you have to do is cite those things, cite those acts of cruelty against ordinary innocent people, and you've got right there, that's the case against Joe Biden. It's that simple. That's your emotional pitch. And then you get into the meat and potatoes issues like the economy or whatever you want to talk about. The border, always a popular one. But you should always demonstrate the depravity of the other side. That's what really gets to people. Learn from how the left always attacked Trump, even when, he had pretty good surface level statistics about his presidency. they would always just revert back to, well, he's a bad guy, and here's why. And they would make that case. And, certainly Trump supporters disagreed with it, but people on the left were receptive to the arguments that Trump was a very bad person. And so that made them want to vote as hard as they could against him. And so the right, I would think, would want to take the same approach. I mean, why would you want people to feel indifferent towards Biden? You've got plenty of reason to make people hold him in utter contempt. And remember, Biden himself is just a symbol. He doesn't really know what's going on, but it's his administration, what he represents, the Biden regime. So, with that said, I will see you folks all back here next time.